Okay.
Number 8. In number 7, we had finished the bulkheads and had started the dash brackets. We had talked about this dash bracket right here, which is the pedal rail, holds up the pedal rail, and how I had used the geometry on it, the same as the Countach chassis that I built. And thought that all that geometry ought to be right. What I did not consider was that those used an Alpine 7-inch navigation and stereo unit. Alpine now has a 9-inch screen unit, which changed the dash layout about 1/4 of an inch, changed the steering wheel location about 1/4 of an inch, and that 1/4 of an inch played havoc on my design here, and the pedals now hit the steering column and problems like that. So this piece right here, shaped like this, it's going in the scrap pile. We'll replace it with this piece like this, shaped like this. We had to notch this in to get clearance for the rails, a little bit of different geometry, except that right there, it's going in the scrap pile. Third try. We now have a design that looks like this. And I like it. This kind of reminds me of the time everything affects everything. 1/4 of an inch here, 1/4 of an inch there, everything. Reminds me of the time that I changed the location of a muffler bracket, and before I was done I had to change and modify the gas pedal bracket. True story. And I'll explain how it happened. That sounds absurd, but it is absolutely true. What happened here, get some light back here. Remember our holes here that are wiring, plumbing lines, brake lines, emergency brake lines, shifter cables come through. Remember our Hayco fastener, our Hayco plugs here that go in here to take care of all the plugs. Well, I changed a muffler clamp on the about foot of exhaust that was here. There was a muffler clamp that went about this location. It changed to go to a bulkhead here to simplify things, but when it did, the emergency brake cable came up here like this, and it caused the emergency brake cable to be rerouted, which now made more sense to go into another hole here. When that happened, it made more sense for the throttle cable, which went through one of these holes, to go through a different hole as well, and all of this got shifted. When all of that shifted, now the throttle cable comes up. It changed the location of the throttle cable in the tunnel here and changed the angle and direction it came out up here. So the bracket that held the gas pedal had to be redesigned to accommodate that. So true story. Muffler bracket changes the gas pedal. I want to look at these. I've got the box that the seat came in, sitting here on the CNC machine. I'll get these brackets out of here. I set it up here to get some contrast to this, but I wanted to see the evolution of the piece. There was probably 10 different designs before the old tube frame design and the old chassis came to be. Probably another 5 design changes to get to this point. Probably another 5 design changes to get to this point. That totals 20 so far. Probably another 5 subtle changes to get to this point. This is probably the 25th edition of that bracket. A simple bracket. Let's put this back here. I'm going to put these back in the scrap pile. Each of these brackets is about 1 foot by 2 feet. So by the time you allow a little bit of edge and cut them out, you've used up over 1/4 of a sheet of aluminum to build that, and several days of writing programs. Let me throw this box down off the CNC machine a second. I'll show you here. This is what we've been working on the last day. This is the other floorboard. This is the other fuel tank side, some other pieces and parts. We have that most of the way cut out. We'll get that finished tomorrow and get this thing back on here. Back to this bracket. Simple bracket. It's taken 3 days, 3 designs, 25 different subtle changes of it. Simple bracket. Hold that thought for just a second. Let's think about that whole idea. And in order to put that in perspective, we've got to go back 40 years. Back in the early 70s, when Pro Stock was the absolute cool thing in drag racing, and that was typically a big V8 in a Vega or something like that. The chassis in the world was from Don Hardy Race Cars in Floydada, Texas. Don had a very, very simple primary rule, and that was to make every bracket do at least 2 things. Back in high school, I learned that, realized the importance of that, and that served me well over the last 40 years. Back in high school, my English teacher was real happy to give me library passes to go to the library during study hall, thinking I was going to get some culture. What she did not realize was that the high school library had a subscription to Hot Rod and a subscription to Carcraft magazine. But I did get a little bit of culture. I did get some Shakespeare, and I managed to put all the dirty words in Shakespeare together in one sentence. I thought I would have got an A on that paper, but get an assignation, go driving in a brothel, find a concubine. I remember something from high school literature. Anyway, let's look at this bracket. Obviously, it is the pedal bracket. That's the first thing. Second thing, it is the steering column bracket. It locates and holds. Got the right size hose clamp this time. It locates and holds with this hose clamp the steering wheel in the correct location. It supports the dash. It also indexes the dash. In this plane, once these rivets line up with this lines up with this, everything is square and good. This piece right here folds up, and it catches the dash pod with the gauges in it. If this piece was not here, that dash pod, which is just the 1/8 inch die bond material, which is a plastic composite, would have to bend 90 degrees, and it's a bad flimsy joint. With this, I can bend it up, go into the 1/4 inch aluminum, and the dash pod is solid. Number 5. Number 6. See here, the main frame rails are here and here. This rail right here goes out, and the shocks, the shock support comes off right here. You see how that's in line with that? By the time you get the dash, the structure of the dash in here, that actually works structurally to reinforce this. Now you have a big, tall, solid mass here supporting this frame. So, 6 things that one bracket does. For that, I can accept the fact that I've spent 2 days on it, wasted a lot of aluminum on it, but I have it the way I want it now. We have also moved, final thought, moved this chassis over on the jig a little bit. It's centered on here now. Before I had it over where I could work, but we're about to put this on here. So next video we'll do that. Starting to lose my M&M spots here. Get a close up on that. They're not, they're running out. But I think that's it. Next episode we will put the other transmission tunnel side in and floor pan in. See you then.